Hey guys, Prowl 1701 here, and today on It's Armageddon, we're going to be doing a massive polling here. A massive face-off event. This is another one of those situations where the aliens have invaded, and they've given us an ultimatum. They're going to give us a list of 25 verses, face-offs basically, between two Doctor Who stories, half of which we can choose to keep, half of which we have to get rid of and give to the aliens, or they're going to decimate the entire planet. See, luckily these are very nice aliens, very kind aliens. They're letting us keep half of the stories we like, and they're only going to take the other half. They're very benevolent, when they're not wiping out planets. So, this is an interesting one to me. Think of it as a very massive face-off. But, unlike in a regular face-off story where I'm usually asking you, which Doctor Who story do you think is objectively better, or which Doctor Who story do you just subjectively like more? This scenario is, you have to pick between two Doctor Who stories which one you want to keep for humanity and which one is gone forever. So, that's totally different because you're having to decide not just for yourself, but for everyone else and for future generations. Which story do you keep for posterity and which story is just gone? And to me, that's a whole different parameter of rules to go by when deciding between these two stories. Because a couple of these I've done in face-offs before. Some of these I would love to do in face-offs in the future. One in particular has got to come soon. But there's a big difference between saying, hey, which one of these two stories do you like better personally? And, hey, which one of these two stories do you think if aliens were about to bomb us into oblivion, would you be willing to sacrifice and only keep one of for the rest of humanity until the end of time? So that's what we're going to do. We have 25 face-offs here. You may want to grab a pen or get ready to click the pause button a lot. So we're going to go through these 25 face-offs, and I really wanted to make them difficult. I really wanted to get you guys thinking. And the whole point of this Armageddon is we're going to talk about the polls now, and then I'm going to review what you say in the comments, and then we're going to do another It's Armageddon video in a week or two where we'll discuss the results of the poll. I'll give my opinions, the ones I would pick, and I would show the ones you would pick. Much like when I discuss your guys' thoughts in the face-off videos. I really do enjoy doing these videos where I get you guys involved. I really like a lot of my regulars, my subscribers. I like getting y'all involved into the videos, getting your take on things, getting your opinions. I get along with a lot of y'all. We banter a lot. I enjoy that. So I enjoy making you guys part of the channel and part of the experience. And my sinuses are acting up, as they always do. So, we have 25 face-offs, and we're going to get started with it right now. Number 1, the Daleks versus the Daleks invasion of Earth. If you could only pick one of these stories to save, and the other one is gone forever and ever, which one would you pick between the Daleks and the Dalek invasion of Earth? Number 2, Day of the Daleks versus Planet of the Daleks. A couple Third Doctor stories there. Number 3, Power of the Daleks versus Evil of the Daleks. That's an interesting one to pick because Evil actually has a surviving episode. Is it worth keeping for that? Or do you prefer the story perhaps in Power? Curious to see how that one's going to go, because both of them are phenomenal stories. Again, I wanted to pick ones that would be difficult. I didn't want to just be like, the Horns of Nimon versus the Caves of Andrazani, which of course we know Horns of Nimon win because it's Tom Baker, right? I really wanted to do ones that would make people put on their thinking gaps and sit there and go, oh. Number 4, Tomb of the Cybermen versus the Invasion. This is an interesting one, and this will crop up a lot on the video. Is Tomb of the Cybermen held in better regard than the Invasion a lot of times simply because it's complete? And if the Invasion was complete, instead of having to be completed with its missing episodes with animation, would it still measure up? Would it measure up higher than Tomb of the Cybermen, or would it still be considered lower? Because it seems to me a lot of people rank Tomb higher, but just because Invasion is missing those 2 episodes. Because I personally think Invasion has a better story. And we'll see that a lot in this list, where if both stories were complete, I wonder if they would measure differently against each other. So number 4 was Tomb of the Cybermen versus the Invasion. Number 5, The Web of Fear versus the Enemy of the World. And again, how much of a factor is that missing episode 3 in Web of Fear? I'm curious, because they're both 6-parters. Enemy of the World is complete. Web of Fear is almost complete with only episode 3 missing, but it's been animated, even if the animation's not that great. How much difference does that make? Because both stories are considered classics. Both of them recovered just within the past 10 years. And both of them have, a pretty good opinion in the fan base. So I'm curious between those two, which ones most of you guys would go with, and if that missing episode 3 is a factor. Number 6, the Ice Warriors versus the Seeds of Death. Again, we've done a face-off on this one, but again, this isn't just picking which one you like the best. This is picking which one would you be willing to sacrifice if you could only keep one of these stories forever. And how much does the missing 2 episodes of the Ice Warriors play into it? Number 7, an unearthly child versus the Time Meddler. This is an interesting one because an unearthly child seems oftentimes to be remembered of as one really good first episode that is essential Doctor Who viewing, and then 3 episodes with cavemen that are versus the Time Meddler, which just has a phenomenal reputation as a whole. Is that first episode of an unearthly child more important than the 4 episodes of the Time Meddler? That's the reason why I paired these two together. I was curious just how strong that first episode of An Unearthly Child is, whether people would pick it over all of Time Meddler, which is phenomenal. Again, I wanted to make this difficult. Number 8 is the Aztecs versus the Reign of Terror. 2 historicals going head-to-head. And does the missing 2 episodes of Reign of Terror that had to be animated make a difference on that decision? I believe those are both Season 1 stories, if I remember correctly. Number 9, Spearhead from Space versus Inferno. This is a hard one. I love both of these stories. And how much difference does Spearhead from Space being in true HD now on Blu-ray make a difference, whereas Inferno has had to be, cleaned up and gotten to looking better with technology, as none of its masters exist. How much of a difference does that make? But Inferno's also almost twice as long. So do you go with it to preserve more story? I'm curious on that one. Spearhead from Space versus Inferno. Number 10, The Mind of Evil versus the Daemons. Another interesting one. 2 Season 8 stories, both stories with good reputations. Mind of Evil is my favorite story from Season 8. So I'm curious between these two, which ones people would choose. Again, wanted to make these difficult. I want you guys to have to think about these for a minute and go, Number 11, the 3 Doctors versus the 5 Doctors. If you could only keep one of these 2 amazing stories, which one would it be and why? Number 12, Carnival of Monsters versus the Green Death. This is an interesting one to me because the Green Death is probably more prestigious. It has probably the reputation. It's one modern Who fans, if they heard the name, they're like, oh yeah, the one with the maggots. But Carnival of Monsters to me is the hidden gem. It's really the hidden gem of the Pertwee era. It's kind of the one, if you're a modern Who fan, you don't hear people talk about. Like, you hear about Genesis, you hear about Caves, you hear about Green Death, you hear about Inferno. Carnival is the one that's just as good that doesn't seem to come up in conversations as much because it is a phenomenal story. And it's a little tighter. So I'm interested to find out which one of those will prove to be the more popular choice between Carnival of Monsters and the Green Death. That's an interesting one. Number 13, the Pyramids of Mars versus the City of Death. 2 phenomenal stories that I love. I love City of Death. It's my favorite Doctor Who story versus a story from the best season Doctor Who's probably ever put out objectively. Pyramids of Mars is a classic. And it's probably hard to pick between these 2 classics, which is, again, why they're going head-to-head. Number 14, Genesis of the Daleks versus Robots of Death. I'm curious to see, because I figured Genesis would be the heavy favorite there, but I'm curious to see if there's some people going to go with robots on that, because I know it's a popular story. Here's a fun one. This one's got to be a face-off video soon. Sometime before this video goes up, I've got to do a face-off on these. Number 15, The Seeds of Doom versus The Talons of Wing Chiang. Tom Baker's 2 best season finales, hands down. I love The Talons of Wing Chiang. I love The Seeds of Doom. It's hard for me to pick which one is even my favorite between them, much less be in a situation where I have to give up one of them. How do you do that? And it's like asking me which arm I want to get rid of or something. They're both phenomenal stories and some of the 2 of the best Doctor Who stories ever made, which is the reason why they're going head-to-head here. And I need to do a face-off on these eventually, just so I can find out which one people tend to like better. But the Seeds of Doom versus the Talons of Wing Chiang. Number 16, The Ark in Space versus the Horror of Fang Rock. A Hinchcliffe classic up against a Williams classic that feels like a Hinchcliffe classic. So we have The Ark in Space, which is one of the masterpieces of Season 12, up against one of the Williams era's best stories, and easily the best story of Season 15. Both of them with horror influences. Which one do you pick in that situation? It's hard to choose. It's hard for me to choose. Let's see. Number 17, Castrovalva versus Kinda. I'm curious, especially with Castrovalva being the third part of a trilogy. Which one would you pick in that? Number 18, Resurrection of the Daleks versus the Caves of Andrazani. Both good stories. Number 19, Four to Doomsday versus Black Orchid. This one I think is going to be varied. I can see this one being probably split down the middle. I'm curious how that's going to go. Number 20, The Two Doctors versus Revelation of the Daleks. Revelation of the Daleks might have a better story, but The Two Doctors has Troughton and Jamie. Can we risk sacrificing some Troughton? It's a tough choice. Number 21, The Mysterious Planet versus Terror of the Vervoids. Two good stories from Season 23. Number 22, this is an interesting one right here. Number 22, Remembrance of the Daleks versus The Curse of Fenric. Because I do consider these to be the two quintessential McCoy stories. If somebody is a modern Who fan and they haven't seen any of the McCoy era, and they're like, what's two stories I should watch from the McCoy era? I'd probably say, well, your first two should probably be Remembrance of the Daleks and The Curse of Fenric. That'll give you a pretty firm grip on the Seventh Doctor. But if you could only keep one and you had to sacrifice the other, which one would you keep? It's a tough choice, which again, point of the list. Number 23, Paradise Towers versus the Happiness Patrol. Now, I haven't actually seen the Happiness Patrol, but everybody tells me if I like the Paradise Towers, I'll probably like the Happiness Patrol. So I'm guessing there's some similarities between them. So I'm curious to see which one people would keep if they could only keep one of the two. Number 24, Greatest Show in the Galaxy versus Survival. Now you have a situation where I have a feeling Greatest Show might be considered the better story, but Survival is the final story. And that the fact it is the final story might hold some significance there. So I'm curious to see if you could only keep one of those between Greatest Show and Survival, which one will people choose the most? And number 25, The 10th Planet versus the Moon Base. Which one do you think, if you could only keep one, should be saved? The 10th Planet versus the Moon Base. So that is 25 verses. I hope some of them are incredibly difficult. That is the point. I can't wait to hear what you guys say. I will probably let this run for a week or two, probably a week or so, and then I will tally up the results, and then I will give my thoughts, and I will share your thoughts. And I'm curious to see how this goes. I'm curious to see if this is something you guys like or not. So let me know what you think of this idea. Comment down below. Let me know your choices and your thoughts on the video as a whole. Other things to do while I have you here. If you like this video, go ahead and click the like button. Click the subscribe button. I always like that nice thumbs up vote. Click the bell for notifications. I also have a Patreon. If you like what I do and like to support what I do, there's a link to that down in the description below. I also have a P.O. box if there's anything you would like to send me. I have a link to my Amazon wish list down there as well, which I update regularly with Doctor Who and non-Doctor Who stuff if you'd like to check that out. Most importantly, though, thank you for watching.